to share with us his insights on the topic, the use of an integrated service learning sociological framework towards building a democratic society. Please join me in welcoming Associate Professor Mark Anthony D. Abinir, DSD.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for attending in this session. And I would like to thank also the organizers for inviting me to be in the presence of teachers from the different regions of the country. And in here, in my presentation, we're going to focus on three major parts. So first, an introduction. We're going to first understand what is service learning, what it is and what it is not, and how it is intrinsically linked to democracy building. And the second part of the presentation, we'll talk about service learning in the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Is it even possible to do this one? And we're going to talk about the integrated service learning sociological framework. And I'm going to do a case presentation on how I apply this framework in the service learning that I do at the Ateneo. And we're going to end with some summary and conclusion. At the different points of this presentation, I'm gonna pause for you to have some reflection session to answer these questions on your own, and maybe you could type in your responses in the chat box. Okay, so let us begin. First, now what is service learning and what it is not? And basically, let me first give you a definition which we adhere at the Ateneo. Service learning is a course-based, credit-bearing course. So it is something that it is required for the students. And what do? They participate in organized service activities that addresses the needs of community partners. And not just the service is being done, students are required to reflect on the service activity. And that reflection goes into them delving deeper in understanding the course content, a broader appreciation of the discipline of where they're coming from, and also enhance their sense of civic responsibility, especially when they engage with partner communities, they engage with different issues, and they understand that their role are not just students to study in the school, but they have a voice and they can participate in nation building, and that they could participate for a healthy democracy, okay? And you would see that definition by Brinjal and Hatcher in his work, Service Learning Curriculum for the Faculty. Now, another one that, if you feel that service learning is not a course, but it could be a requirement in your school for graduation, because I've seen schools that do service learning, but it is a non-credit bearing course, but it is required for graduation, okay? And in here, in the definition by Barbara Jacobi, it says that service learning comes from the field of experiential education. And there are a lot when we talk about experiential education. And its specific focus is to address human and community needs. Again, you will see there that there is a partner community that we need to address. And there are structured opportunities that the students do in order to promote student learning and development. And there are two key factors that Barbara Jacobi stressed when it comes to service learning. There is what we call reflection and reciprocity. Later on, I would deal more on what reflection and reciprocity are all about. Okay, so based on these two definitions, now what are the essential characteristics of service learning? And there are a lot of definitions out there. I just only gave you two, but if you're going to extrapolate the pattern, the essential concepts when people talk about service learning, in the work of Janet Eiler and Dwight Hillis, they extrapolated this four basic essential characteristics of service learning. First, of course, we need to have a form of placement. We need to have a partner community to begin with, where students are going to interact with. Second, there is a requirement that students apply what they learn in the classroom in what they do in the community, in addressing problems or whatever it is, the purpose of the engagement. So there must be a form of application. And usually this is where the service comes from. Third is there must be a form of reflection. And reflection is very crucial in service learning because in reflection, students think critically and analyze their experience in the service that they have conducted with the partner community. And they're going to tie it up, with the course content, learning objectives, and even tying up with their role in nation building. Okay. And in service learning, we just do not ask students to, after doing a service project, just give them a question, okay, reflect on your experience. No, it must be a structured reflection in order to call out the learning of the student. So the title of the book, Where's the Learning in Service Learning? So you need to be able to tease it out. And there are a lot of reflection models when we talk about service learning. The easiest one that I use for quick reflections with my students is the Borton's development framework. In here, you ask the students, what do they think about the service that they did? From there, how did they felt about it? And what insights did they gain? So what is the importance of those feelings? What is the importance of those insights that they gained in their experience in serving a certain partner community? And from there, they go on to proceed. Now, what will they do from those learnings? What are the action points? So this is very easy. What, so what, and now what? Okay. Later on, I'm going to give you a demonstration on how this could happen, especially in our session today. So this is the easiest one in order to facilitate reflection of students, to be able for them to learn deeply from their service experience. Another one, which is a favorite of mine, is Graham Gibbs' reflective cycle model. So there are different questions that students try to question based on the service that they provided in with a partner community. So they're going to describe what the service is all about. How did they felt and what were they thinking when they were doing the service project? They're going to evaluate what were the good and bad experience. Not everything is joyful when we do service projects. There are a lot of hardships along the way, difficulties that will be encountered. So students would need to evaluate the good and the bad experience. And they're going to analyze that. They're going to make sense of that situation, of that good and bad experience. Why did they experience that good and bad? How can it be addressed? So they could end up with a conclusion, what else could have they done better? And from there, they're going to formulate an action plan. If they're going to do the service project again, whether it is required or not required anymore, especially if they're going to do it in their school clubs or student organizations. If it arose again for them to have another opportunity with that partner community or with another partner community, what could they do better from their previous experience? So this one goes deeper from thinking, from feeling, thinking, reflection, abstraction, up until doing. So it does not end with what they've learned. What will they do for the next round of experience to make things better? So I love this Gibbs reflective cycle model, and I give it to my college students at the end of the service experience in a semester. All right, so again, there are a lot of reflection models if you Google search on that, and you would be amazed on the different frameworks on how to do reflection with students when it comes to service learning projects. And the last one is the importance of reciprocity. In here, there must be recognition, respect, and valuing of the knowledge, perspective, and resources that each partner contributes to the collaboration. In a service learning project, there are three major stakeholders. We have the community partners, we have the teaching staff, and we have the students. And in here, if students and partner communities are the only ones working, then the teachers are not involved. If it's only the teacher and the partner community, students are not engaged. If it's only the teacher and the students, then everything becomes theoretical. Communities are not served by that engagement. So the sweet spot is teachers, community, and student work together. Now, what do I mean by this? Teachers screen out and talk with partner communities, assess the needs of partner communities, and try to see, as a teacher, what problem could I be competent enough to guide my students to address? Because not all community needs can be addressed, right? And you need to be able to assess also your competency, because you cannot let your students do a certain project if a teacher is not even competent about it. Remember, the teacher is the guide of the students. The students are learning from the experience. So it should emanate from your expertise. So you don't let students just, okay, we're going to have a service learning project, find a partner community where you want to work with. From the very start, you must be there to be able to establish partnerships with communities, introduce them with your students so that the three of you could work together. So there are different benefits if you do an effective service learning. As you would see here, community partners benefits with the interaction with the students, learn from the students, and also benefits from the experience of the faculty. The faculty or the teacher is able to enhance his or her teaching capabilities, to be able to talk with community partners, to be able to engage with students. And for faculty members in higher education, this is also a point where they do research work. And students, they benefit from the experience. They are able to connect what they learned in the classroom towards connecting it with real life problems. And they appreciate more why they are studying, because they see its significance in the real world. So those are the benefits. So if you're able to achieve that sweet spot where community partners, teachers, and students work together, studies have shown in the work of Westheimer and Kahn in their 2004 publication entitled, What Kind of Citizens Do We Want to Produce? And the Politics of Educating for Democracy. In that article, they have seen that service learning creates positive experiences for students and communities. It becomes an effective tool for teachers to teach and create impacts to communities that are being served. And SL is widely used to educate students about participatory or justice-oriented citizenship, because you cannot do without it. When you try to address community problems, you get immersed with different issues that need to be addressed. And when you dig deeper, you see that there are deeper problems that need to be addressed. The students could ponder upon and think about what can be done about it. So it is very important to be able to achieve a social justice orientation for the students, because this is essential for democracy building, where citizens participate in nation building, not just, remember, in democracy, we do not elect a king or a queen. We elect representatives that express our will. And not all the times that our representatives will be making the best decision. That's why the participation of the citizenry is important, to have their voices heard, so that agendas of the nation can be put forward, bringing in different interests of different groups in our society. So they tried to make that connection in that article, and I invite you to read that, because everything has a political choice when we talk about service learning, which we will delve deeper later on when we talk about the integrated service learning sociological framework. Okay, so there is a connection between service learning and building a democratic society. And we must also recognize that there are different service programs that we do in schools. And what is the difference of service learning from the other service programs that we are familiar with? I invite you to read the work of Andrew Furco in his 1996 publication, Service Learning, A Balanced Approach to Experiential Education. And in here, he gave a spectrum where whenever we do service programs in schools, there's always a provider of the service and the recipient of the service. And there is a focus why we do the service. The focus could be for a learning experience, or the focus is to provide service itself, okay? And there is a spectrum. These are all essential in our school, by the way. No, there is no hierarchy in this one. It just says that what service learning as a balanced approach between we focus on the provider of the service and the recipients of the service. And the focus is both on the service itself and the learning from that service. So that is service learning. The difference of that is when we do promote volunteerism in our school. Volunteerism is more on students engaging in different volunteer service activities, maybe do a PowerPoint presentation or clean up the streets or whatever it is that students could do voluntary work. The main focus there is the service itself. And you let the students be able to learn from the experience on their own. So there is no teacher involvement in terms of facilitating that learning experience. Now, there could be, but it would require a lot of effort for that volunteer experience to be able to synthesize it. Another greater one is community service, where these are organized activities, especially these are done by school clubs or even by faculty members themselves or teacher associations, where they do organized activities to benefit a certain partner community. And there could be a balance of, there is a service being done, but would there be learning along the way? No, it would again require for the participants to be able to learn from their own based on that experience. On the other side, there is what you call field education and internship. Now, these are designed for students to be able to apply their learning based on what they learn in their discipline or in their subject or course. And the ultimate goal is for them to be able to sharpen their skills. So that is in the field of field education and internship. Service learning is the balance of the two. Remember again, the essential characteristics of service learning. There is placement, there is application, and two very important ones. We have reflection and we have reciprocity. So service learning, as many literature would say, and many practitioners would say, is the golden mean, if we're going to use Aristotelian terms, the golden mean when we talk about having a service experience for students, and they're going to learn about it and reflect about it. And there are many types of service learning action or projects that students can engage with. It could be direct, indirect, advocacy, and research. Now, when we talk about direct service learning experiences, students conduct training, students do tutorials, they have a direct interaction with the members of the partner community that they're engaging with. Indirect is that students do a fundraising program, or they are able to organize a relief operation to be able to address the needs of families, of communities affected by a certain type of disaster. So they organize these relief operations, they turn over the relief goods and services to a certain third party. It could be a government, a church, and this government or the church deals directly with the people. Another one is advocacy. And in here, students go into what are the issues being faced by people in the communities. For example, we have in one of my projects that I'm working with my students is the Kaliwa Dam problem. And in here, students learn about the value of forest, the value of water, and they're going to create advocacy materials for people to understand, do we need this dam? Or what do we need to preserve the forest, and how are going to be able to lessen the demand for so much water? NCR has such a great demand for water, and what can be done to be able to tone that down so that we don't need the Kaliwa Dam? And last one is research projects, which are also very essential when we do service learning projects. In here, especially, there are certain partner committees and institutions that need research, but they are not able to hire the professional services because research could be very expensive. So this is an opportunity for students to do research that can be used by partner committees and institutions for their planning. So later on, I'm going to give that kind of demonstration in the case presentation that I will give. So these are the different types of projects that can be done in service learning subjects or courses. Okay, so we're done with the first part of my presentation. So right now, I want you to be able to pause and reflect and think about these questions. Okay, what new insight did you learn about SL or service learning, or what learning has been reinforced regarding what you already know about service learning? Why is this insight or reinforced learning important for you? And what do you intend to do about this new insight or reinforced learning? So this is a demonstration of Borturn's development framework when we try to make students reflect on what they've learned. So in this session, you are asked to reflect upon what did you learn or what insight did you gain from the first part of this presentation. Okay, I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to think about it, and then we're going to move on. And maybe later on, you could type on in the chat box what your insights regarding this first part of the presentation. All right. Okay, so that is a pause also for us to be able to digest what I have just presented. Try to connect it to ourselves as teachers. What is the value of this presentation? What are the value of the concepts that has been introduced? Is this something old? Is this something new? So Ricky says here, service learning is similar to the work immersion in the senior high school curriculum. It is more applicable in college and easier to be implemented in a university. Later on, we're going to interrogate that, but thank you for typing that in, Sir Ricky. Is it only applicable in college or university? Or could we do service learning in basic education, from kindergarten up until grade 10? Grade 11, grade 12, it is senior high school, but in the old curriculum, senior high school is just like the first year and second year of college already. Okay. Thank you for that, for typing in that insight. Okay, we're going to go back to that later on. All right, so the second part of my presentation is service learning in the time of COVID-19 pandemic. And this one affects all of us, right? The mandate is there is no face-to-face interaction with our students, and we are doing things online. And as we read, social media posts, news about it, there are a lot of challenges that teachers face in this area. But the question is it possible? I invite you to read the work of Waldner, McGurry, and Widener in their article titled E-Service Learning, the Evolution of Service Learning to Engage a Growing Online Student Population. And they created the models of e-service learning. Okay, so you would see on the left side, there is what you call the on-site instruction, meaning face-to-face, and the online instruction. And the service could either be on-site or could be online. Traditionally, before the COVID-19 pandemic, many are doing the traditional service learning, where there is, on-site service and on-site instruction. And there are cases, especially in service learning in other countries, where they have their students deployed in another country, but the instructor is at the home region. For example, my colleagues in Australia and United States of America, they send their students to do service learning projects, but they do not accompany their students. So they instruct their students online, but the students do service projects here in the Philippines. Hybrid 2 is the service is online and instruction is on site. So there is a face-to-face instruction happening, and students are doing online services. You will be surprised. I invite you to go to the UN volunteer services. And there are a lot of full online volunteer work that is available that people can engage in across different disciplines. And you will be amazed that there are a lot of service projects that can be done online. So that is feasible. The third one, hybrid tree, is instruction and service is partially on-site and partially online. And this is what we call the blended approach. Now, this is the ideal situation. But right now, we are forced to accept the hybrid form, which is extreme service learning, where service is online and instruction is also online. At the Ateneo, we have full online engagement. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of this? I'm going to share my experience regarding this one. So when we do extreme service learning or full online instruction and full online service, the advantages are, it opens up opportunities to partner outside our local area, even across national borders. Just like here, in our session today, you are coming from different parts of the country. That is amazing, right? Now we are able to hold this colloquium and you are coming from different parts of the country without even traveling or going to the national capital region. So it avoids the complexities of travel in far or even remote areas. And there are a lot of online communication platforms to make it easier to bring community members, teachers, and students together to talk about issues. It's now easy to be able to invite partner communities and their members to be able to talk about their situation in the community, what issues or problems they are encountering. We have communication platforms such as Google Meet, we have Zoom, just like this one, and a lot out there that could be for free or for you pay for the application. And it provides opportunities for continued online engagement because everyone is now forced to do things online. So that is the ultimate means of communication already. You cannot say to people, nah, I want you to come to me so that we could talk face to face. We cannot do that anymore. Since everyone is forced to do online, therefore there is a greater opportunities to have continued online engagement with partners. Now, from disadvantages, there are disadvantages that we need to recognize, okay? First one, it is harder for students to understand the context of the partner community and to foster community building. Remember, right? To see everything is far more different when we experience it at face value, when we are there in the community and when we engage with people, the interaction. And it is harder to do that. So teachers have a responsibility to raise the consciousness of the students to case studies, giving them preparation regarding what is the context of the urban poor, farmers, future folks, what problems do they face. So secondary literature and case studies are very important for students to understand before they engage with partners, so that they already have an idea where their partner communities are coming from. So there's a lot of effort to be done in order to raise the awareness of the students. Of course, in our country, we have a problem of intermittent to low internet connection, right? We experience that. And if we have, weather disturbances, partners cannot be contacted. I have this experience where my students are working with the ITAS of Porac, Pampanga. And during sunny days, it is easy to, they don't have an online communication platform, but we do analog communication through cell phones. So you could do pasa load and unlimited calls for 3 or 5 days. So in order to talk with the ITAS there. But whenever there is, a weather disturbance, it's hard to have that kind of constant communication. And there is uneven access to online technology can skew which partners to work with. So the partners that can only engage online or can have distant communication platforms are the ones that we can only work with. Or if not, you need a third party, an organization, a partner NGO that works directly with certain beneficiaries, with certain committees that could be the third party. that could bridge the communication gap. So there are a lot of things to work with. And again, it would limit which partners we can work with. Direct service experiences are more complicated. How do you do direct training programs right now? So, well, this is one example. Now you can conduct webinar series or colloquiums online. But then again, at the other end of it is, can partners have access to the internet? And maybe you could try to invest on that. Or again, just like our partners being skewed, those are the only ones that we can work with, those who are available online or has long distance communication platforms. And timing, students and partners spread across time zones, especially for in international service learning projects. Now, in one project that I'm working with, it is with the Center for Migrant Advocacy. They are an NGO that works with Filipino migrant workers, and the focus now is the impact of COVID-19 to OFWs here and abroad. No, when I say here, all OFWs that has been forcefully repatriated back to the country, and those who are forced to stay in the countries that they're working with. So my students are communicating with OFWs in different parts of the world. And it's quite challenging because there are different time zones. And at the same time, my students are working with students from Macquarie University of Australia because they have a joint project regarding understanding the impact of COVID-19 to OFWs. So there are a lot of time differences that need to be addressed. Good thing with Australia, there's only about, depending on the daylight saving time, there's only about 3 to 4 hours difference. So students can work out with the schedule. But for OFWs, coming from different countries all over the world, you need to plot more time with that. So you see, it is possible. Not only in the country, you could do service learning projects in the country, but across national borders. But then again, timing could be very difficult to handle. Okay, so those are the advantages and disadvantages of full online instruction and full online service. And from those, I want you to be able to pause and reflect. Okay, oh, I love it. There are a lot of people now typing in their insights. Okay, so students take ownership of learning when they experience learning itself and be able to reflect soundly from it. Thank you for that, Jomel. SL is similar to collaboration, teamwork. I have community engagement, solidarity, and citizenship subject. I love this subject because I experienced the SL. So this is coming from Luning Ning Diones. Okay. So for the second part of my presentation, I want you to be able to reflect on these questions. Okay. What challenges will you face or are you now facing when it comes to full online SL? Or are you able to conduct it in this time of the pandemic? How can these challenges be addressed? What benefits can be gained if such challenges are successfully addressed? So right now, depending upon the situation of our region, how relaxed the rules are, there could be some schools that could do some form of hybrid instruction online, service on site. So it depends upon the region that you're coming from. But if you are forced to do full online service and full online instruction, if you're able to address those challenges, what are the benefits of it for the partner community, for the teacher, and for the students? At the Ateneo, the challenges that has been addressed is, again, to work with partners that have internet connection. If a certain partner community has no internet connection, we connect them with a partner NGO who has a presence there and work with the community. So there is a mediator for the connection. So the NGO has the internet service. Partner communities can connect with the NGO and talk with the students through that medium. So others is that, I've seen schools that give laptops and provide internet load to be able to talk to key contact persons in community. So you could be innovative as you can be, depending upon the resources that you have and depending upon the commitment that you have in order to address this hurdle. Okay. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes to think about, no, not 10 seconds to 15 seconds to think about these questions. And maybe you could type in your responses here in the chat box. So Melinda says here, SL is an application of most essential learning competencies to be achieved and to be realized. Thank you for that. Janet, also awakening for us teachers. It challenges us to build a more concrete connection with our stakeholders. Now, I tell you, service learning takes a lot of effort because again, as I told you in the reciprocity Venn diagram, teachers must be involved from the very start. Okay, you screen what projects that can be done by the students. You guide the students in order to deliver that project, and then you extrapolate the learning of the students. At the same time, you work with partner community. So it takes a lot of effort. Okay. Okay, so there are those who are teaching community engagement, solidarity, and citizenship. Now, I invite you to read the modules and textbooks that I created for that under DIWA Learning Systems. I have a book on community engagement, solidarity, and citizenship, where I talk about service learning there. Okay. All right. So think about this question. So let us now go to the third part of my presentation, which is the integrated service learning sociological framework. Okay. Now, this framework is the one I created with with Professor Carol Mahoka of the Singapore University of Social Sciences. And it was just published a month ago. You could say a year. So the publication date is 2020. So we created this framework trying to understand that when we do service learning projects, there's a certain political and social orientation why we do these projects. Now, remember, service learning is an opportunity for students to interact with communities. And when we interact with communities, we deal with real life problems. And we deal with social change. And in sociology, it talks about, one of the things that sociology talks about is social change. And it's when you're able to anchor that into three classic sociological theories, you would be able to see why we do service learning on a certain way. Okay, so you have structural functionalism, symbolic interactionism, conflict, and critical perspective. So I invite you to read this paper to be able to understand those sociological theories, so that I could, I focus on, based on those sociological orientation, based on how we view society and based on how we view social change, there are three major service learning orientations that teachers, faculty members, and schools do. Okay, there is what you call the charity-based approach, the community-based approach, and the critical or liberating approach. What I and Carol Ma did was to synthesize these three to be able to come up with the fourth one, which is the empowering service learning approach or orientation. And my task today is to be able to give a snippet of what these approaches mean and what they are and what are their implications in democracy building. So the first of one is what you call charity-based service learning. This was promulgated by Morton in 1995 in his work. And the strength of this one is you introduce students. Why we do service learning? Because we want to bear witness to the dignity of the other persons and the concept of unconditional giving. Okay, that's why it's charity. It is based on love. And in the education literature, it champions experiential and reflective learning. However, it has a certain kind of weakness. This orientation of service learning results into a one-way transfer of knowledge, expertise, service from schools to communities, and does not challenge the status quo, but merely adapts and copes with social injustices. So students do the service without questioning why people are suffering. They just give and give. So at the end of the day, the impact to the community that the service is transactional, just one way, and tokenism, meaning communities do not have a voice regarding the service experience, because it is the students, the main focus is students providing service to the community. We see communities as entities that we need to adopt and take care of. So at the end of the day, it creates a kind of dependency that we do not want. Okay. Examples of which is providing academic tutorials, conducting mural paintings, coastal cleanups, etc., without making use of participatory strategies in its assessment, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So we do not involve the community in the planning of the project and the evaluation of that project. So that is the weakness of the charity-based approach, because it is focused on, students doing the service and learning from that experience. So the committee has no say about it. Okay. The second one is the community-based service learning approach. So the strength here, now there are faculty members and teachers. Their orientation regarding service learning is that they want their students to have an opportunity to have a sharing and exchange of ideas with the partner committees to bridge cultural divides. Okay, so that's why you have immersion programs. And that is part of the service learning experience. And they champion constructive and reciprocal learning. Community members and students learn from each other, respect one another, and have that breaking of cultural divides, biases towards partner communities. However, the weakness is there are times that if students are not critical about their position in society, their privileges, the class that they belong, the ethnicity that they belong, the gender that they belong, and other social structures, it could have a harmful interaction with community members. Now, to give you an example, in one immersion, there is a team of students. It was my experience a long time ago. Students wonder why people are not washing their hands in the community, and they critique about it. And what they did not see is that there is no access to water in the community. Now, they are telling people to wash their hands. They are telling people to the importance of hygiene, because it was a water and sanitation project. But they did not understand that there is little or even no access of water in the community. So they are providing recommendations that are not even possible. Now, some immersions are just a day or 3 days or even a week, but that is not enough to be able to have a full experience of the problems of people in the community. But immersions are very important because they provide a transitional relationship. Transitional means going towards a deeper form of relationship. And examples of which is placement of students in communities to render structured predetermined services. Now, I see this in healthcare courses where healthcare students are exposed in communities and they do some form of services. They have a few interaction, but if those interactions are not guided, it may end up with a different interpretation of what the community is all about. I have one experience of one student telling me, "Sir, we provided training in the community, but after 6 months, when we returned there, they had a hard time recalling back the training that we provided to them. And if I did not facilitate why, he or she might have ended up saying, people in the community do not value the training that was given to them." But when I interrogated the student with questions of why do you think that they forgot about the training session? And he or she began to realize it is only one training session, and there are a lot of problems that community members of people go through. And one training session can be forgotten after 6 months. And I told him or her that, how about our lesson 2 months ago? Did you still remember what our discussion was? So if you try to interrogate students, you try to uncover their biases. So they would learn about why things do not work the way they assume that they want to work. Okay. So If you're not able to do that, then community-based service learning experience may end up, for students having more biases against the partner communities that they are working with. That's why in the literature and the experience of service learning faculty members, you have to have a critical approach to service learning. So it seeks authentic relationships, redistribution of power, and social justices to address problems that beset the community. And it champions critical and emancipatory learning. If you are familiar with Paulo Freire, then you would understand what critical service learning is all about. Examples of projects that go in this one are community building and organizing work, advocacy campaigns, or even political activist work, such as facilitating community protests, public demonstrations, and boycotts. Now, the weaknesses of this one is that there is a hard link between service learning and societal betterment. Now, there are a lot of factors that could take in place, and it might frustrate students that what they do does not really impact the situation in partner communities. And because everything is time-bound in the course, in one subject alone, you cannot transform the entire society within 3 months or 4 months of engagement. So critical service learning, in the critique of it, needs to be lowered down in terms of expectations regarding, can we really achieve the social change that we desire if our engagements are only within a few months. Okay, so based on those, on those different approaches of service learning, so we tried to, I and Carol Ma tried to synthesize what are the best for each one based on empirical data and based on the literature. So we encountered what we labeled as empowering service learning. So what do we mean by that? So in here, in empowering service learning, there must be a focus on solidarity-based school and community partnerships. The school must be involved in the partnership, not just only the students, the faculty. It is the entire school that partners with the community and create programs and engage and farm out the engagement with faculty members and students. Now, later on, I will demonstrate that. And engagements must be long-term. It must be intensive, spanning across different year levels and spanning across different quarters, terms, or semesters. Now, it must be a continuing engagement. And it maximizes different educational objectives of experiential, reflective, critical, emancipatory, constructive, and reciprocal learning. Now, for you to be able to understand that, I'm going to give you a case presentation of how I did this in my class, especially for students majoring in development studies. So the Ateneo has a lot of partners. And what I did when I talked to the Office for Social Concern and Involvement, so this is the office that is in charge with the community engagement and service learning of the entire university. So they are the office that knows what the different partners need, okay? So the partners are Center for Migrant Advocacy, Waves for Water. The projects regarding Waves for Water is water accessibility for far-flung communities and sanitation of water. Pakisama is concerned on rights of farm workers. NTFP is concerned on the importance of the value of people and forests. And of course, we have Gawad Kalinga, okay? So these partners have different needs. And what the Office for Social Concern and Involvement does, or OSCE, is screen those and try to farm it out to different faculty members, which among those needs can be addressed by the faculty through service learning projects in the courses that they handle. So on the second part is the faculty member and the OSCE talk and try to negotiate things at what can be done. And the faculty member decides which among the needs can be addressed and talks with the partner community in the presence of OSCE. So from there, service projects are already created. Now, these are the projects that needs to be done by the community because they are important for them. So now, I talk now to my students. So these are the available projects. They have a liberty to choose which among these projects that they can work with. Now, when I say liberty, depending upon, it's like an enlistment. They're going to enlist themselves, first come, first serve basis, and whatever would be the outcome of the final list, those are the service projects that they're going to engage into. And I divided the projects into 3 courses. So we have the first semester. Right now, semesters are divided into quarters. Quarters are 6 to 8 weeks of engagement. So quarter 1, quarter 2, the first quarter is the subject on community development and social change, which I teach with development studies majors. And in the second quarter is social science 13, or the economy, society, and sustainable development. And the last one is on project management. And it is partnered with NSTP 12 of OSCE, because OSCE handles NSTP also. So in this case, these are the different courses that I handle, and they ran across the entire year. And what I did was, in each course, there is a capstone project the students need to do with the partner community. First is to assess the situation of the community. That's where research comes in as a service learning project. So they need to create a development assessment report. And they need to work with the partner. And in here, so they created a report. The research methodology is they did archival review, focus group discussions with farmers in Camarines Sur and farmers in Iloilo and Capiz, and key informant interviews of different farmer organizations. Okay. So they're able to come up with key findings and discussions and provide recommendations for the Pakisama group. And from those recommendations, what projects can be pursued. Okay. So it is important for the partners to read the report and critique the report, because I require students to submit a draft to the partners review the draft, and students act upon the draft to create a final report which is acceptable for the partner. Now, the value of this report is for them to use it in their planning processes in their organization. So that is the first quarter course. The second, in the second quarter, which happened in November to December, is students from that report need to create what projects can be done with the partner and try to connect the project with sustainable development goals. Okay, so from the research, right now they're doing some form of action planning already. So they created this proposal, which the partner approved of, which is an advocacy campaign for Filipino farmers. And these are the different objectives of the project and how they are connected with the Sustainable Development Goals. And from there, what are the projects that emanate? They have the information campaign regarding the Magna Carta for young farmers, an email campaign for people to support the Magna Carta, a donation drive to help farmers affected by severe typhoons, and capacity building seminars for farmers regarding agricultural skills and knowledge that they need to learn, and even organizing skills in order to strengthen their organization. So you have here advocacy, indirect and direct research, direct service learning projects the students are engaged into. I also required them to be able to trash out the funding for this. What is the theoretical part? When you say theoretical, these are the resource contribution of people involved in the project and the real value that needs to be shelled out, the money that needs to be shelled out in order to implement this project. So they created a financial sustainability plan, and they created a community sustainability plan. How can the partner community go on with the project even if the students are no longer involved? So that is for the second quarter. Right now, this is the beginning. By February, we're going to begin with the second semester. The students are now going to implement that project, evaluate it, and close it with the partner. So you see, the entire project started the first semester and it will end in the second semester. And I requested the program director that the project management course should be done the full semester, not just a quarter, because project implementation would require a long engagement. So it was approved. So we have the entire semester to implement the project. So in this way, we have the project management structure, how it's going to work, who is in the leadership in this one, what are the roles of the students in implementing this project, the different timelines that need to be monitored to ensure that the project is being implemented. So they have the donation drive timeline, they have the email campaign timeline, and they have the capacity building seminar timeline. So across the 3 different courses working on a project, they go deeper and deeper. So they started with a research. From that research, they planned what project, and by the next semester, they're going to implement that project. So it is a full experience of the student. So that's why I told you in the empowering framework, it is long-term, it is intensive, and it spans across several quarters, terms, or semesters. Now, the weakness of this one, it may face impediments of the conservative nature of schools. Schools operating a neoliberal mindset who does not believe in social justice orientations. And it takes considerable effort and resources to strengthen and sustain collaboration. So you need people involved there. I need to be partnered with the community. I need to work with personnel in the Office for Social Concern and Involvement in order for this effort to be successful. So in that case, that is the entire integrated sociological framework. There are numbered patterns there. So why is it numbered? Because I propose a social service learning orientation grid. You have here K to grade 6, grade 7 to 10, grade 11 to 12, and higher education. Which service learning orientation would be best for you at these levels? Ideally, it could look like this. From kinder to grade 6, it's more on charity-based service learning. In grade 7 to 10, it is community-based where you introduce immersions. Grades 11 to 12, it could be critical already, where students ask about social justice orientations. And in higher education, where you work across different levels and you work across different courses to make projects that have a deeper impact. But it does not stop you from grade 7 to 10 to do charity also, from grade 11 to include charity and community-based, and from higher education, from charity to empowering. It's up to the design of the faculty and the school administrators who believe on the value and power of civic engagement and service learning. Or others, I have seen schools that add on critical approach even from grade 7 to 10, and even from grade 11 to 12 in senior high school, where different courses collaborate with one another in order to achieve an empowering service learning orientation. So going back now to the assumption a while ago, is service learning only appropriate for college or universities? Now, based on this proposed orientation, it is appropriate for all levels. It depends on the orientation that you're going to use, how deep you want your students to engage. Okay, so from there, this is the last reflection questions. Now, based on your school context, which SL orientation do you think is best for you? Is it charity, community-based, critical, or empowering? Why do you think this is so? And what can be done to make service learning in your school more effective in building a democratic society? So the ball is in your hands because you understand better the context in your school, how your administrators think about it, and which orientation would be best for you. But remember, each orientation has its own strength and weakness. And the challenge is for us to go deeper, if it is allowed, for us to be able to contribute in building a democratic society. All right, so summary and conclusion. Key pointers, reflection, and reciprocity are essential to service learning. Full online service learning can be done, but it has limitations. Service learning projects should not only be an academic requirement, they should be practical and useful for the partner community. That's why I involve partner communities in grading the work of the students. Service learning is more effective when it is done long-term and addresses social justice goals to build a democratic society. And schools need to put resources and adjust structures and policies to make long-term service learning work. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.